Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hi there, very good morning to you. I'm Colin Brazier with you through until 2 p.m. this New Year's Eve. Coming up over the next few hours, a look at the dullest December in years, not because of the pandemic necessarily, but the absence of sunshine. Just 26 hours of sunshine this month, mild too. Not for 65 years have we had so little sunshine in December. Also, NHS chiefs signal their belief that Omicron isn't sufficiently severe, especially amongst the elderly, to require extra lockdown steps. And another 2 violent deaths in London. We ask Ian Duncan Smith how the absence of fathers may be one reason that so many young men are turning to knife crime. But first, the headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
I'm Rhiannon Jones. This is your news at 11:02. Boris Johnson has announced government booster targets have been met and that the UK is in an incomparably better position than this time last year. In his New Year message, the Prime Minister says the country has offered all eligible adults the chance to get a booster jab. He adds 7 in 10 in England have had their third vaccine, but he urged those celebrating tonight to remain cautious and to take a test before going out.
British people have responded heroically, voluntarily, and in almost incredible numbers to the call to get vaccinated. Though I must, of course, urge everyone to be cautious and to take a test if you're going out and to remember the importance of ventilation. Follow the rules if you're in Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland.
Health leaders, meanwhile, have warned up to 40% of vaccine appointments are no-shows. The NHS has said it's encouraging to see people coming forward for their jabs. However, some vaccination clinics are reportedly only a third full. Doctors are urging everyone to take up their jab and take necessary precautions while celebrating this new year.
Please, whatever happens, don't shoot the messengers. Those of us who are in healthcare, our main concern is to make sure that the risk of infections are minimized. And if people are rigorous and nevertheless can have a chance to enjoy themselves, that's what we're all aiming for.
2 boys have been stabbed to death within an hour of each other in separate incidents in London. The killings bring the number of teenage homicides in the capital this year to a record 30. It comes as experts say social media is partly to blame for the rise in teenage violence in London. It's claimed disagreements escalate when played out online and violent content has normalised aggression. Youth worker Ken Hines says education is key to tackling knife crime.
It's very troubling. We're not learning lessons from the past. We continue to make the same mistakes. We need stronger deterrence with young people who are carrying weapons. We need to have better education of young people to stop them from picking up or carrying knives or walking with other youngsters who may encourage them to carry knives.
Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes in the US amid devastating wildfires. The governor of Colorado has declared a state of emergency after 600 homes were destroyed. The fires are spreading quickly in strong winds of up to 105 miles an hour, with the blaze currently covering 2.5 square miles. Scientists say climate change and an extremely dry autumn and winter are to blame. The US and Russian presidents have exchanged warnings over Ukraine. During the call, Joe Biden said he needed to see Russia decrease its military build-up near Ukraine. Vladimir Putin, meanwhile, said sanctions threatened by Washington and its allies could lead to a breakdown in relations. Both sides, though, said diplomatic talks in January could ease spiralling tensions. Credit card spending has leapt past pre-pandemic levels. Barclaycard says consumer spending has risen by nearly 6% this year compared to 2019. The credit card giant says it's due to a boom in online shopping. Takeaways, digital entertainment and home improvements were among the things consumers spent their money on. That's despite the broader economic impact of the pandemic. Britons living in the EU have been given the green light to travel home by road via France. Non-essential travel to the country has been largely banned since the 18th of December in a bid to limit the spread of the Omicron variant. It comes as Germany is also set to lift a ban on British tourists. From the 4th of January, those fully vaccinated or that have an important reason to travel, they can enter the country. And care homes that set up their own makeshift pubs during lockdown boosted the spirits of those cut off from loved ones, the surveys found. More than half of 4,000 care home staff said socialising in-house helped residents' well-being during the pandemic. 3/4 were found to have formed a stronger bond, while a fifth used the pub daily. And that's your news update. I'll be back in an hour with the latest headlines. For now, it's back to Colin.
Well, a bit bleak this, but it needs tackling. Another ugly milestone then for our capital city this morning. Never have we seen so many teenagers perish at the hands of other young men in London. 2 more victims in the last 24 hours. Boys aged 15 and 16 stabbed in South and West London, respectively. Their names, when they're officially released, will be the 29th and 30th on a lengthening roll call of young men murdered in the course of 2021. There will be, again, calls for more resources for youth services. On the phone-in shows this afternoon, there will be those who argue for more vigorous police stop and search powers, while others will say we already have too many and that they are racially charged. But one aspect of the debate that's often left unexamined is the role of family and faith. Many of the gang members who stab other gang members have no visible fathers, and the gang provides the older male authority figures some of them crave. And then there's the role of organised religion. It's often the case that some of the most effective interventions on the meanest of London's streets and elsewhere come from former gang members whose lives have led them, sometimes while in prison, to a deeper or new religious faith. Let's consider some of those questions. We're joined by Ian Duncan Smith, who founded the Centre for Social Justice, partly to help people who find themselves on some of those mean streets. So Ian, thank you so much for your time this morning. Do appreciate it. We're up to 30 dead teenagers in London this year.
Yeah, it's shocking, but not unexpected. We've been writing about this for over 15 years now and produced 2 papers on how to deal with this. The Centre for Social Justice team went and visited the cities of Boston, Cincinnati, New York, Los Angeles, to look at what they've done. And in some of the areas like Boston, they've had a dramatic impact on reducing the levels of what we would call gang violence. And when you examine them, they're very straightforward. They will say to you, and I think the same here, Glasgow's been phenomenally successful at doing this with their structure based on what happened in the States. And you understand who you're targeting. They're targeting children who are growing up in very dysfunctional homes. All the signals are sent very early on, often even at around the time of birth and neglect. And there are also other issues too. You know, children at school who start to play truant early, disappear, who are disruptive in class. These are the big warning signals where they're going. If they're on the streets, they're going to drift towards gangs. Gangs offer them two things, as you said earlier on. Quite often they crave a kind of family existence. And to them, the gangs, quite often we discovered, become kind of father figures. They become structures. In fact, they're not. They're very dysfunctional, but the appearance of it is important. And the second thing they crave is some kind of means of being able to look after themselves. And that, of course, is the money from the dealing or the carrying of weapons that they get paid. So all of these come together. And then if you add, as somebody said earlier on, social media into this, this is the way that messages can be passed around and children can be invited in, as it were, then this process gets worse, not better. So what we discovered is two or three things. First of all, what happened in Glasgow and has happened in the other cities. The police have got to have the powers to make sure they make gang behavior very difficult indeed. They squeeze it. But at the same time, you need lots of very good community groups that are proper ones that actually get the children, once they're arrested, out of the gangs into remedial education to be able to get them restabilized back, if necessary, into strong parenting. All of that process. You strip out the children from the bottom end of the gangs, and then the gang masters can't operate. And of course, the gang structure collapses. But as we discovered in all these cities, it's permanent. And what's happened too often in London is that different boroughs have done this. Other boroughs next to them didn't. Gangs move from one borough to the other and then back into the borough once they give up because they think they've solved the problem. And that happens the whole time. So it's got to be 100% across the whole of London. It's got to be across the whole of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But particularly in London, it's become the epicenter for this. And it has to be coordinated. And this is where I've been calling on the mayor to make sure he charges an absolute process to make sure that both policing, community help, support for youngsters, getting the early warning signals right, working with the Home Office, they can be tackled. It can be reduced, even beaten. But we're not doing enough by any means compared to so many other successful cities.
When we compare the successful experiment in Glasgow, and I think it's fair to describe it as successful, that idea that knife crime and gang crime will be treated almost as a public health problem, and that there was a time a year or so ago where people were citing Glasgow endlessly and saying, that's the way we tackle this. It's whether that's because it's in London, it's not worked on anything like the same basis, and is that because it is so disjointed? Or is there something else in play in London that's not in play in Glasgow?
Well, London is obviously on a different scale, but the lessons from places like Glasgow, and I say they learnt their lessons from successful cities in the USA in youth crime, and there are a number of different features of what they do. They crack down very hard in their policing at the first instance. They actually even had a gang call-up, which is to call all the leaders of the gangs to be at this meeting, and they warned them that if you don't reduce and get rid of your activity, we will constantly disrupt and arrest you no matter what. And then they stood by that. The second thing they do is really important, though. The public health element of it is in the remedial work that you have for those young people who are trapped in gangs. And quite often young kids don't want to be in the gangs, but they get sucked in because they get threatened or they get bullied or they get told to take some weapons or some drugs from A to B and make sure they pass the money back, but they get robbed en route. And of course, that's all planned by the gangs. And then the gangs say, well, you owe us now, so you have to be in the gang. So some go in willingly, others don't. But the end result is much the same. And you have to strip those young people out before it's too late. Get them into remedial education, restabilize their lives. Sometimes you have to move those families, literally, physically move them to another location, which we were doing when We did this in my borough, which is Waltham Forest. And it's quite interesting what happens then. If that commitment is permanent and if the resources are behind it, and if teachers and schools work to notify both the police and the community groups that someone's missing from school early on, and that shouldn't be tolerated, they need to be worked with. All that has to happen as a cross-community, cross-groups, visiting nurses that go in early to families to check them, need to be able to tell others that some families are showing signs of neglect and abuse. All this stuff needs to start very, very early. These are families that are suffering great dysfunction. Often, if the children aren't in the gangs, they're suffering massive neglect and abuse. So it's about getting them restabilized with real hope in their lives, rather than this one-track process which they're sucked into. But it has to all happen at once, at the same time, and never stops, never.
So Ian Duncan Smith, we appreciate your contribution this morning as ever. Thanks very much indeed. Coming up next, the best of Dan Wootton after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. The last day of the year will be very mild for the time of year. A lot of clouds out there, but most places staying dry. There will be some rain here and there through this evening, particularly across parts of Scotland. So we've got an area of low pressure nearby. This weather front brought some heavy rain earlier to parts of eastern England, and this weather front is just lingering across Scotland, slowly edging northwards. So things turning a little dry this afternoon through the central belt, but otherwise there will be a lot of cloud and some patchy rain in the west of Scotland. Much of the rest of the UK, though, dry, lots of cloud, but some brighter skies across parts of central and eastern England. The odd shower over the hills of Wales and northwest England, and it is very mild. Temperatures 13, 14, 15 degrees in a few places. Cooler across northern Scotland, but even here temperatures above average. A bit more of that rain then trickles north through this evening, and we'll see another area of rain, potentially bring a few showers across Northern Ireland, and then around midnight we will see some outbreaks of rain pushing into southern Scotland. That'll work its way towards northern Scotland through the early hours. Otherwise, again, most places dry, and it will be a very mild night if you're heading out. Temperatures in many towns and cities holding up in double figures. Mild start to 2022 then. There will be this band of rain working from west to east slowly through the morning. It'll tend to fizzle out across northern England, Scotland, some good spells of sunshine here, but we will see a bit of patchy rain lingering across East Anglia and the southeast into the afternoon. Showers coming into the northwest, where it will be very windy actually, a blustery afternoon across the Western Isles especially. But again, it will be very mild, although that wind will make it feel a little cooler. Staying fairly gusty through Saturday evening as well, and into Sunday, we're looking at things staying pretty mild with further heavy rain coming in, perhaps across the south. That rain could be very heavy on Sunday. Staying showery on Monday before things turn brighter, but also colder for Tuesday and Wednesday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.